Hi guys, my name is Nathan Kariuki. You're watching the African Sports Guy. Today, episode 1, it's only natural we talk about Africa's #1 sport, football. Over here, football is king. Do you know what the first ever Pan-African organization was? The Confederation of African Football. 6 years older than the Union of African States that became the AU. Football rules the roost around here, and no sport on the continent even touches it. Doesn't matter if you're wearing the white of Zamalek in Egypt, or you're wearing the black of Orlando Pirates in South Africa. Football is in our blood. So today we're going to talk about one of the most important World Cups in Africa's history. No, not the 2010 World Cup. This is a World Cup where we didn't even send a team. This is Africa in the 1966 World Cup. 1960s Africa. The winds of change are blowing through the continent and decolonization is in full effect. The world has just been introduced to a young Brazilian kid named Pelé, and the world's also been introduced to brand new nations, the Ivory Coast, Chad, Nigeria. And while these young nations struggled to find their feet and their place in the world, football thrived. Clubs were formed across the continent, AFCON grew and grew, and we produced some of the best players this continent has ever seen. Ghana's Osei Kofi was described by Gordon Banks, Gordon Banks, the World Cup winner Gordon Banks, as being as good as George Best. And while we're producing these great players, Africa was still yet to make our mark at the World Cup. We hadn't had a team at the World Cup since 1934, and FIFA was struggling with how the best way to include all these new African nations. In early 1964, FIFA met to discuss how to best include all these new nations in the World Cup. The 62 World Cup had been a great success. How could they make 66 better? FIFA's solution was that Africa, Asia, and Oceania would share one World Cup spot. Now just think about that for a second. Think about how big Africa and Asia are, and they wanted us to share a World Cup spot. Now I don't know about you, but I think that's pretty unfair. And luckily I wasn't the only one to think so. FIFA had an executive member, Ghana's Ohene Gyan. Now I probably butchered his name, but you're gonna have to forgive me on that. And he was an executive member of FIFA, and he was also director of sports in Ghana. His opinion on this proposed solution to include Africa in the World Cup was simple as pathetic. He said Afro-Asian countries have the most expensive and most painful qualifying process, and to ultimately only have one spot is absolutely pathetic. Now luckily Jan didn't take this sitting down. He went to his good friend, and a very powerful friend at that, Mr. Kwame Nkrumah. Nkrumah, the great mind that he was, he realized that this was not just about the football. This was a symptom of a problem that the West had with Africa. And that's that the West viewed us as independent, but we weren't equal. We just didn't deserve a seat at the table. Now, as we were fighting for our independence and we were struggling to find our dignity, Nkrumah realized that this wasn't a problem, it was an opportunity. He leveraged the support that he had from other African leaders, and him and Jan organized a boycott. Now, not everyone was on board for this boycott. Some countries felt that, hey, we hadn't had a team in the World Cup since '34, we should probably just be happy we got a third of a spot. Luckily, after some protesting and some negotiations, eventually, everyone agreed. If FIFA didn't give Africa a World Cup spot, every African team would pull out. So, they take the solution back to FIFA, and it goes back and forth a bit, but in October of 1964, FIFA came back with their final decision. A 16-team World Cup with one spot for Africa, Asia, and Oceania to share. Now to make good on their promise, every African nation turned their back on FIFA. They pulled out. They said, we want nothing to do with this. You have to think back, this was 1960s Africa. This was really the first time where we could really flex our muscles on a global stage and say, no, we do deserve equality. We do deserve what everyone else gets. And you know what? We did it. We came together as a continent and we turned our back on the West. We turned our back on FIFA and said, you know what, we don't want your World Cup. We can do it without you. So the 66 World Cup goes ahead and there are no African teams there. England goes to the final, England win it. They haven't stopped talking about it since, by the way. But at that World Cup, who was the best player? Who was the top goal scorer? Eusebio. Now you might think, okay, he's Portuguese. But no, Eusebio, born in Mozambique, he was an African. We didn't even have to turn up to steal the show. And you know what? FIFA realized that. FIFA realized what they had missed out on with all these great African teams that were coming up. Ghana had one of the strongest national teams in the world at the time. And and they missed out because they refused to give Africa a guaranteed spot. So what was the result of the boycott? Well, the very next World Cup in 1970, when England were defending it, Africa had its guaranteed spot. We had shown our unity, we had shown what a united Africa can do. Now it might seem small adding one team to the World Cup, but think about this. In the 2018 World Cup, we're going to have 5 teams, and in 2010 we hosted the damn thing. If the boycott had never happened, who's to say when we would have got that guaranteed spot? Would we have still been at the 2002 World Cup, waiting to qualify alongside an Asian team? Who knows? So what can modern Africa take from the '66 boycott? Well, one, the power of unity. A united Africa and Africa working together can make change on a global scale, and that's not just on the football pitch. That's not just in sports. That's in everything, in politics, in business, in art, in music. A united Africa is a powerful, powerful thing. And it's time we start considering that more. But the most important lesson we can get from this: when they give you a crumb and tell you it's a feast, throw it back in their face. Africans and African countries tend to have this really weird complex where they'll give us something small and act like it's a big deal, and we'll accept it. Why do we do that? When they gave us something small, which was a shared spot at the World Cup, they expect us to be grateful for it. But you know what? We weren't. We demanded more. You're only worth what you can negotiate. And it's time as Africans we step up and start negotiating for more, because we damn well deserve it. I'm going to leave you with the words of probably the greatest African of all time, Mr. Nelson Mandela. He said, "Sport has the power to change the world. It has the power to inspire and unite people in a way that little else does." Sport can be a very powerful thing for Africa, and it's time for us to start recognizing it.